Brooks and former Clippers guard J.J. Redick. The Western Conference Finals moves back to Minneapolis today for Game 5. Dallas has a 3-1 lead over the Timberwolves, 5:30 tip-off on TNT. The L.A. Sparks are at Chicago tonight, 5 p.m. tip. The Dodgers had 16 hits, including 4 homers, to pound the Mets in New York. The Dodgers scored 18 runs in the 3-game sweep over the Mets. The Dodgers are back home Friday against Colorado. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
When I move my body, I feel like freedom. Happy anniversary, KBLA.
Station west of the Mississippi.
And they wondered if a black talk radio station would work in Southern California.
Y'all did it!
Well, KBLA Talk 1580 toasts its 3rd anniversary on Juneteenth, and you're invited to celebrate with us.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, y'all the bomb.
All you have to do is go to KBLA1580.com right now and sign up. Admission is free, but mandatory, and space is limited. Once we reach capacity, we'll have to cut off the online registration, but it's open right now.
Oh, my God.
So don't delay.
Thank you guys for doing the best at what you do.
Log on to KBLATalk1580.com right now and register to join us for an afternoon of good music, good people, and good vibes.
Happy anniversary.
Wednesday, June 19th, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. We will provide the food and drink, but be sure to bring your low-back chairs, blankets, and your personal picnic baskets.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Let's celebrate 3 years of being the most trusted, credible, and reliable source of news and information.
We love you, KBLA.
We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're black and stride again.
Black and stride again.
Happy anniversary.
Put your bad self. Say it loud. Say it loud. Look here. Some people say we got a lot of malice. Some say it's a lot of love. But I say we want to quit moving until we get what we deserve. We've been abused and we've been scorned. We've been treated bad, talked about, as sure as you born. But just as sure as it takes 2 eyes to make a pair, brother, we can't quit until we get our share. Say it loud. Say it loud.
Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I hope you are black and proud, or proud of whatever you are. And whoever you are, I'm glad to have you tuned into our program today. We don't discriminate around here. I'm glad to have you as a listener. In this hour, a great conversation in front of us. We just got through talking to Areva Martin about this horrific incident in Palm Springs, California, the playground of the rich and famous, in case you've just tuned in. Just wrapped a conversation with Areva Martin, noted civil rights attorney, CNN legal analyst, about a case that she is counsel for, again, in Palm Springs on behalf of about 1,000 families, family members in Palm Springs who are seeking compensation, seeking justice and reparations, essentially, for their families' homes being burned out, literally, over a half-century ago. The city of Palm Springs decided that it wanted to continue moving toward becoming known and noted for being the playground of the rich and famous, and a bunch of black and brown folk in the downtown area were in the way, as it were. They literally knocked on their doors, told them to get out immediately, and if they didn't, they'd be pushed out. And believe it or not, just 50 years ago, they raised this entire community, burned it down, used the city's fire department to burn down the neighborhood, then called in the bulldozers to clean up the mess. And now you see what you see when you visit Palm Springs, the great restaurants and all the shopping and the hotels, all the retail that happened because they pushed a bunch of black and brown people out over 50 years ago. We have talked on this program in the months prior about the Bruce's Beach case here in California. You know that story. It made national news. And there are all kinds of stories and documentaries and books about the ways in which black people have been put upon, not just with their bodies, but with their land and their possessions. And so in this hour, a conversation with author Andrew Carl about his book. It's called The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. Once again, the Black Tax. 150 years of theft, exploitation, and dispossession in America. I never know how these dots are going to connect around here. It's not like we planned to have a Reva on before Andrew, but it worked out that way. So the timing of this conversation could not be more propitious, given what we just discussed in our last hour. And I'm pleased to welcome Professor Carl on this program. Professor Carl, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's a great honor to have you on. Let me start with this. This is a broad question, and there are a couple of things I should mention that are tracking in my mind. One is that this weekend we will commemorate the 103rd anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. In my final hour today, I do 3 hours every day. In my final hour today, I am honored to bring to this national audience a conversation with the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre, Mother Viola Ford Fletcher, 109 years old, mind still sharp as ever, believe it or not. They say black don't crack. She looks good. She was in studio here not long ago to record this conversation. So in the next hour, a conversation once again with the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre, Mother Viola Ford Fletcher, as we move toward the 103rd anniversary of that horrific moment in American history this weekend. That's on my mind. What's also on my mind, as Areva just said moments ago in the last hour, is that we're moving toward Juneteenth, and she's encouraging the city of Palm Springs to do the right thing so they can make this announcement around Juneteenth that they are doing justice by these persons in Palm Springs. All of that, Professor Carl, leads me to ask, as I work my way into your brilliant text, how has, in fact, speaking now of the latter, Juneteenth, how has emancipation, as it were, generated economic gains for this country?
Well, I mean, African Americans over the last 150 years have struggled and strived to acquire significant amounts of property, homes, land, and that's something that my book chronicles, but also shows some of the structural forces that have undermined those aspirations toward property ownership in America.
Tell me more about those obstructions.
Well, one of the things that I focus on in particular is local tax systems. The way that property taxes have been administered and enforced have consistently and continue to overburden Black homeowners with higher taxes than white homeowners receive, and have subjected them to the threat of dispossession through tax delinquency sales. And these have been pretty significant forces in contributing to Black land loss over the 20th century.
I'm not naive in asking this question, but what's been the motive behind this black tax and treating these particular fellow citizens in this way, denying them these sort of economic opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I show in the book is how throughout the Jim Crow era, you had local tax administrators who would intentionally overvalue Black homes, Black neighborhoods, and land for taxes at the same time that those areas were being undervalued on the open market. And that was often, that could be intentional. What we deal with today is oftentimes more structural in nature. It still is a product of decisions being made in those local tax offices, but it's one that is kind of built into the entire structure of how properties are assessed and how local taxes are distributed.
Just getting started in this hour with the author of The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. That's a strong title. We're going to unpack that and all that is behind it, all that's in the pages of this text, I should say, when we come forward with the author, Andrew Carl, on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler. I'm Cookie Serratos, and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Febreze. So my home is also my office, and before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up, then spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin Ultra Strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it, yeah, roll it, yeah, drop it. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl, yeah. It's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Andrew Carl coming your way right now. He's author of the book, The Black Tax. 150 years of theft, exploitation, and dispossession in America. Before I get back inside the book, Professor, tell me more about your backstory, your research area of interest, and how this subject matter becomes of interest to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been doing research as a historian on the history of race and real estate in America and the ways in which the housing markets have shaped and the struggle for equality throughout the 20th century. And so one of the things that I wrote about in my earlier work, I've had a book that talked about the history of black beaches in the South, and the communities that formed along the coastal areas of the U.S., and including places like Bruce's Beach, which you mentioned earlier. And one of the things that I looked at was, how did we get from a point in the early 20th century when African Americans owned substantial amounts of land in coastal areas, to where we are, places like Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, to where we are today, where many of those areas are now white-owned, white resorts, and African-American land holdings have shrunk considerably. And so I was looking at the kind of mechanisms by which those losses took place. And one thing I found, I kept coming back to, seeing how local taxes, property tax assessments that would, skyrocket, forcing families to sell their land under duress, or, a tax bill that might not have arrived. And, suddenly a family finds themselves having their land sold at a tax sale. These things happened, and they happened a lot more than, we really have recognized. And that was something that really led me to think that there's something bigger going on here. And that led me to sort of, go down this path of trying to, find out, to what extent were these property tax administrators and, these tax sales, how are they contributing to and fueling inequality over the 20th century and still today.
You are engaged in what I would call a work and a witness. You are a historian, to be sure, but it's a work and a witness in terms of bringing the truth to light. One other personal question, and I'll move forward with the book. I'm just curious. I'm glad you're doing it, as I said a moment ago. But why does this interest a white male? I love the subject matter, but I'm just curious on a personal level. Why does a white male historian care about this particular intersection of race and real estate, even as I celebrate it?
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's a good question. And I care about injustice.
Yes,
I care about inequality is my North Star. I mean, in a sense, like that is really what has driven my interest in studying the past and speaking, to public audiences about why the past can help inform us and help us understand the forces that are contributing to inequality today, so that we can begin to find ways to address and make a better future. Now, when it comes to, I truly believe, and I've always sort of felt that the best way to understand American history, the best way to understand how inequality works and the forces that reproduce it, is to look at it through the lens of African Americans. I think that African American history is critical to understanding American history as a whole, and that Black people's experiences in America are really one of the best and most important critical lenses to understanding how America works and how it works for some and not others. And so that's really, what drives me and what has sort of led me to continue doing this work.
No, that's a beautiful thing. You are a historian, but now I want to make you a philosopher for just a few moments here. I want to make you a philosopher, even as you are a noted and brilliant historian, because you said something that I think deserves unpacking. And I heard it, and I'm sure my brilliant audience heard it as well. In answer to that question, you said, Tavis, inequality is my North Star. Inequality is my North Star. And my mind immediately went to this. I wonder how different our nation would be right now, even as we are in the midst of a very complex race for the White House with some complex characters and all the Donald Trump backstory and MAGA and all the stuff we all know. I've said many times that I still regard racism as the most intractable issue in this country. It is, to my mind, the most intractable issue in America, and that's why I call what you do a work and a witness, to bring again the truth to light about the ways in which this black tax, 150 years of theft and exploitation and dispossession in this country, as your book names it, is something that we have to wrestle with. But I'm struck by that phrase, never heard it quite put that way, that inequality, Tavis, is my North Star. Here's my question. How different might our demos, how different might our republic be if more fellow citizens of all races could say the same thing, that inequality is my North Star, and anything that I do, any work that I undertake, is ultimately about trying to make sure that America is a more fair, a more equitable, a more just nation. But I've never heard anybody say to me, Tavis, inequality is my North Star.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, I understand, the history of race and racism in America. Race and racism is a force of inequality for everyone. It is, one of the things that I show in my book is how, these tax systems that have disadvantaged African Americans, these practices have, in many respects, they haven't sort of universally benefited whites. It's actually and oftentimes contributed to the upward redistribution of wealth for everyone. And I think, white folks in America need to understand how much they are harmed ultimately by a system that uses race as a tool of division and uses the oppression of African Americans is one that I think is symptomatic of a larger set of inequalities and problems that we all face in this country. And that's something that I think, history can offer as many lessons, and the history of racism in America can offer us important lessons for understanding the problems we face today.
As an avowed and unapologetic progressive politically, that's my mantra. I've never quite framed it that way, but you and I are in simpatico in that regard, that inequality is our North Star. And because it is our North Star, my role here every day is to try to advance a program, try to curate a program that challenges us to re-examine the assumptions we hold, helps us to expand our inventory of ideas and look at America through a different prism. And again, I'm just marinating on that line. If more of us could look at America through the prism of inequality as our North Star, it might change the nation that we are in. I digress on that for now. It's a beautiful phrase, and again, one that I'll be wrestling with for a few more hours beyond this program, I can assure you. Now back to your book, The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. I want to take that and break that down. That's a bold, bold title. I believe that if you write a book, the title ought to tell you what the book is about. Yours indeed does. But it's also a damning indictment of the nation to say that for 150 years there's been theft. I mean, theft, that's a strong indictment. There's been theft, there's been exploitation, and there has been dispossession. I want to stand down now and give you some time to unpack that part of the title and what we find inside the text. Take it away.
Yeah, so, we have seen, and as I mentioned earlier, that African Americans have suffered great losses in land ownership, home ownership over the course of the 20th century. We continue to see how housing markets don't work the same way for Black Americans as they do for white Americans. That it's costlier. The value of properties in Black neighborhoods don't appreciate it the same way. We see all these ongoing problems, and one of the things that my book really aims to do is to sort of explain how this happens, how it's happened over time, and how it continues to happen today. I think one of the most important things I stress throughout at the outset of the book is this is not just history. These are ongoing problems that we need to tackle today. Black neighborhoods continue to be overassessed relative to white neighborhoods, forcing every African American, not just homeowners, but renters. I mean, virtually anyone who goes to sleep at night with a roof over their head pays property taxes. And Black Americans are forced to pay more in property taxes and get less in return. So these are features of local tax systems that I sort of explain how they work. But also, and here's the theft part of this, there are many instruments within local government, in particular local tax administration, that have been vulnerable to manipulation and abuse. And these have been factors and forces that have resulted in African Americans losing significant amounts of land. I mean, even in some cases, I talk about an entire town, an African American town in Arkansas that was wiped off the map through taxes that were assessed on property fictitiously, and then when they went unpaid, then they took all the property. So I mean, these are instances where that we have not really sort of looked at closely and understood just how significant and how devastating they are cumulatively.
Tell me more about this Arkansas town. I mentioned earlier we're moving toward this weekend the 103rd anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, and it sounds like they didn't burn this town down in Arkansas, but that's a scurrilous way to force people out of town, to put some fictitious taxes on them, and then anyway, tell me more about that town, about the story. Give me the name of it.
It's Edmondson, Arkansas, and I think that's a good point you make about the fact that many of the examples I give in my book are not like Tulsa. They, in the sense, and we know about Tulsa, we know about, say, Forsyth County, where African Americans were, where there was a virtual racial cleansing. What was happening in the stories that my book tells was more subtle. It was insidious. It was oftentimes by the books, and that should have really kind of force us to sit up and take notice, because these things can still happen. So in the case of Edmondson, Arkansas, this was a all-Black town founded in the late 1800s. They had a thriving local community, small businesses, a school, churches, but they were in the midst of the Arkansas Delta, a plantation-based economy. And so in many respects, many of the planters surrounding this town saw, independent, self-sufficient, property-owning African Americans as a threat to the local economy, one that was dependent upon, cheap exploited labor and dependency. And so they conspired to essentially, get the county to assess taxes on the land. None of the people who owned property in the town ever actually received any tax bills. And then when those taxes went unpaid, they sold it at a tax sale. And, one night the people of Edmondson, Arkansas went to bed as homeowners and as an independent community. the next morning they woke up and they didn't own their land. They didn't own the town. And this, again, did not happen at the barrel of a gun. It didn't happen through the kind of violence that we think of when we look at this history. This was a kind of bloodless form of racism, but one that I think, really is even more disturbing in some respects and chilling when we think about just how seamless this process was. And I should also add that, they got away with it because the laws on local tax administration are virtually immune to federal intervention. And that remains the case today. These victims at the time had very few recourses other than state and local courts, which were aligned against them. And that's still the case today.
Another powerful phrase that the professor just offers us, that what we saw happen in Arkansas, and frankly, as he said a moment ago, which I'm going to unpack when we come forward, that it continues to happen today. But he referred to it as a bloodless form of racism. Again, a powerful frame and phrase, a bloodless form of racism nonetheless. So it's one thing to ask how it happened then. We may get back to that, but I want to just jump ahead. How does this process continue to happen today? I mean, we see the evidence. You've written the book. There are articles and stories, all kinds of stuff that we could wrestle with in the public domain about the ways in which, as again, your book title puts it, there's been a black tax, 150 years of theft and exploitation and dispossession in this country. But how does that process continue to happen? How do people still have so few resources and recourses?
Well, I mean, look at what happened in Detroit after the Great Recession, when essentially most African-American homeowners in the city, large swaths of the city's housing market were being illegally overassessed. And when many of those homeowners were unable to pay the taxes on their homes, which were being, overassessed, they promptly sold them at tax sales. And, tens of thousands of African-Americans lost their homes in that city over the past decade.
I'm not naive in asking this, but the story makes you breathless because you start with some basic, rudimentary, fundamental questions. Why are black households, black houses, why are black neighborhoods overassessed?
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of factors that remain at play. I mean, one is the fact that local tax administrators in the assessment process invariably tries to find an average for, say, an area, like a neighborhood or a sort of broader sort of geographic area. But what that average often tends to do is average up for lower income homeowners or properties that are worth less than those that are at the high end of the scale. So what that does in turn is it means that, if you own a wealthy home or in a wealthy neighborhood, your taxes tend to be lower relative to the value of your home. While conversely, if you are living in a poorer neighborhood or an area where home prices are less high, you tend to be assessed and taxed higher relative to your value than you should be. Now, what race comes into play here, because we know that African-American neighborhoods and black-owned homes are devalued on the open market because of race.
Hold that thought. I want to come back to I can't get it out. The devaluation in the open market. We'll get to that. But let me complicate this a bit more. We're going to jump into this as soon as we come forward. I was about to ask you whether or not this is a conspiracy or whether or not it's just bad public policy, bad tax policy. I'm thinking now of your example of Detroit. I can pretty much assure you that some of the folk that were doing the tax assessment in Detroit are black. They're black people, and they're overassessing black households. That's the example you use. I can't imagine that they aren't. So is it a conspiracy, or is it just bad public policy, bad tax policy? That just complicates it even more. This is getting good. We're going to talk more about it when we come forward with Andrew Carl, author of the book, The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. You're listening, and I'm glad about it, to Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
We'd like to welcome you on Into a Thursday. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Jury deliberations in the murder trial of Chad Daybell are underway in Idaho. Daybell has pleaded not guilty to the murder of his first wife and the children of his second wife, Lori Vallow Daybell. Vallow Daybell was already sentenced to life in prison in a separate trial. Chad Daybell could get the death penalty if convicted. A Michigan man with a suspended license is in trouble after he logged into his Zoom court hearing while driving. Video of the hearing shows the defendant, African-American Corey Harris, dialing into the Zoom call earlier this month as he was pulling into a parking lot. The judge revoked Harris's bond and instructed him to turn himself in. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
The Final Four and the best of the region meet at the CONCACAF W Gold Cup semifinals at Snapdragon Stadium on March 6th. Who will win the battle for the title? Secure your tickets at wgoldcup.com/tickets and be part of the history. CONCACAF W Gold Cup, our legacy, our cup.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Does the name James Borrego ring a bell for you? If not, you're not by yourself. Borrego is an assistant coach with the New Orleans Pelicans. He spent most of Wednesday at the Lakers practice facility interviewing for the team's head coach vacancy. Other coaches the Lakers have an interest in: Boston assistant Sam Cassell, Dallas assistant Jared Dudley, former head coach Scott Brooks, and former Clippers guard J.J. Redick. The Western Conference Finals moves back to Minneapolis today for Game 5. Dallas has a 3-1 lead over the Timberwolves, 5:30 tip-off on TNT. The LA Sparks are at Chicago tonight, 5 p.m. tip. The Dodgers had 16 hits, including 4 homers, to pound the Mets in New York. The Dodgers scored 18 runs in the 3-game sweep over the Mets. The Dodgers are back home Friday against Colorado. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Shopping for new blinds? At Blindster, we offer over 50 different blinds, shades, and shutters at low prices, custom made for your windows, and shipping is free. Shop at home and order 10 free samples of any product before you buy. Blindster.com.
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, and domestic violence clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. With locations all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit lafla.org. lafla.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Professor Andrew Carl, who's author of a powerful new book, a probing new book, a polemic, I would add, or call it, The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. Once again, The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. That is the title of the text, and I'm delighted to have him on in this hour for a conversation about it. Speaking of conversation, Professor Carl, we had a spirited conversation during that break a moment ago. There are a number of my colleagues here in L.A. inside my studio, inside of our building, who were all gathered in the hallway talking about your book and some of the comments you've just made. I want to allow you to finish your point. You were talking about how these homes, you used Detroit as an example, how these homes are overassessed, but then they're undervalued, devalued on the market. Finish that thought, then I want to share with you some of the spirited comments I heard moments ago about our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we see in housing markets across the country, that, when an African-American family puts their home up for sale, they tend to, have it underappraised. We see examples of families whitewashing their homes and getting a higher appraisal from banks. This is evidence, clear evidence that the housing market and the housing markets in America and the real estate industry as a whole is structurally racist and works to disadvantage African Americans. And homeownership has been held up as this means of building wealth and passing it down for generations. But that has not worked for African Americans in the same way it has for white families. And so, and taxes actually make the way that the tax system works makes all these problems worse. I think, one thing again is that, the over taxation of those homes drives the value of them down even further, and also makes those homeowners more vulnerable to falling behind on their taxes and then falling into this vicious system that local governments administer for collecting back taxes, which in many states exposes them to these predatory investors who buy up tax liens with the intention of making money off of charging outrageous interest and attaching fees to those debts, which if the homeowners don't pay, they can take their homes. And this happens, and it still happens to this day.
Let me pivot in a moment to pivot back to Detroit, but you keep saying stuff that makes me think. It's a great conversation, and I appreciate it. But I can't get to where I'm going because you keep giving me new stuff to probe. You said a moment ago, and I think you're right about this. I've discussed this many times in my career. There've been a number of stories of late about the ways in which the real estate industry is being challenged about many of their practices, and I would not call them best practices to be clear. But they've been challenged, as you well know, of late on the national level, about some of the worst practices of any industry. But you said a moment ago that the real estate industry is culturally racist, I might add intrinsically racist, Why is that? And why I'm not even asking why it is, but why is it still that way? Why is the real estate industry in this country, in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever, that's where we are, multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America that ever is the one we live in right now, and yet you are still saying that this industry is culturally and intrinsically racist. Why?
Well, I think the first thing you need to understand is how this industry evolved over the 20th century and how it really was built on a color line. That value was created through real estate based on the racial composition of people living within the neighborhoods. And, there was that white-owned homes in white neighborhoods were worth more because they were white. And black-owned homes in black neighborhoods were worth less because of that. And also, the way to protect value in this market was through exclusion, through keeping threats to value, to the value of your home away. And so the ways that you saw this happen was through racial covenants back in the early 20th century, and today we see this through zoning ordinances, and also, as well as I show in my book, the tax system encourages these practices by allowing, say, wealthy white suburbs to form and then hoard their local taxes so they can enjoy better schools, better funded public services, and all of that oftentimes is based on exclusion of people of color, low-income families, and all designed to lock in and protect the value of families' homes. And so, race remains a key factor in how those homes are valued, and there's ample evidence to show how that continues to this day. It's not just a legacy of the past. It wasn't something that happened in the bad old days. Like, this happens now.
You said earlier, I want to get back down to that spirited conversation that I referenced with my colleagues here in the hallway during our last break. You have put us in here's the frame you put us in, that black land, black property owners, however one puts it, tend to be overassessed by cities, but undervalued on the market. That's the frame we're in. Overassessed by municipalities, but undervalued on the market. So everybody hold on to that for a second. Then he offered as an example the city of Detroit and what happened after the Great Recession and how all these black folk in Detroit, we know these stories. I've been to Detroit more times than I can count. I love Detroit. I love Motown. But I've seen exactly what Professor Carl is talking about happen in real time in Detroit. Just drive through the city and you will see it. What that ultimately leads to is gentrification. Go to Detroit right now and you will see. You ain't got to look for it. You will see the gentrification in Detroit even as we speak. So I was about to ask you whether or not this overassessment but undervaluing in the marketplace is a conspiracy, or whether it's just bad policy, bad public policy, bad tax policy. Let me take the latter part first, then I'll come to the former part. So the latter part is racist because the latter part, being undervalued in the marketplace, is a construct of the real estate industry. We just talked about how racist they are. So I'm clear that the latter part of black property being undervalued, black neighborhoods being undervalued on the marketplace, that's racism, pure and simple. It's a racist real estate industry. I get that. It's the front part that I'm still wrestling with. So, for example, in Detroit, as I said earlier, I can only imagine that all the folk doing the assessment of these black properties in Detroit are black. And these are black politicians who are oftentimes the mayor and the leaders of these cities. So what advantage does the city gain when you overassess black neighborhoods? They can't afford to pay it. You run them out of town. Two things happen. One, you're destroying your tax base. But number two, you're opening up the door to gentrification, which means you're also destroying your political base. That's where I'm lost. You're destroying your tax base and you're destroying your political base that allows your black behind to get reelected. That's where I'm lost, and that's where Andrew Carr is going to straighten me out about when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on! We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Hi, Tavis Smiley here. We're getting closer to June 18th, and time is running out for you to register to join us for our historic symposium live on C-SPAN, Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com right now if you want to be in the audience when the nation will see for the first time ever a stage full of brilliant black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's all going down. Well, it's actually all going up. Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. live from the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Again, admission is free, but we're filling up fast. So if I were you, I would log on right now to KBLA1580.com to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley in conversation with historian and Professor Andrew Carl. His new book is called The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. All right, Professor Carl, I yield to you now to disabuse me or get me out of this darkness that I'm in about why any city that has black folk doing the tax assessment would over-assess black properties to the extent that they can't afford to pay it. They end up losing the property. You end up destroying your tax base, but as importantly, you're destroying your political base. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be nonsensical but I think the important thing to recognize is how cities and local governments are predisposed to cater to rich people and to corporations and to those who, so in a sense, like the first sort of priority, I mean, is oftentimes, trying to find ways to promote economic development. And one of the tools that local governments have is through tax cuts, tax abatements, other giveaways, subsidies, and so often, and also as well through just simply, not reassessing properties, even if they, if they increase in value, but also not reassessing properties when they decrease in value. Mm-hmm. And that was what was happening in Detroit. Is essentially, the housing market, bottomed out. Homes lost a great deal of their value, but the city refused to conduct a reassessment, even though they were legally required to, because it wasn't in their fiscal interest to. They actually thought that they, were kind of holding on to their tax base, but doing so in a way that shifted the burden heavily onto low-income and predominantly, black homeowners in the city. Then the result of that is that many folks fell delinquent on their taxes. And then Wayne County stepped in, and they were desperate for revenue, and they started aggressively foreclosing on houses because for them that would, for every tax sale that brings in revenue to local governments. So one of the things that's actually perhaps really disturbing, in all of this is how it's often the poorest cities with the greatest needs who oftentimes find themselves taxing property in ways that hurt their low-income and African-American homeowners, and oftentimes, sort of result in these sort of predatory practices of, harvesting revenue through tax sales as well as through fines and fees and arrests. And we saw that play out in Ferguson, Missouri, but Ferguson is by no means an outlier, and this happens in a lot of cities across the country, including ones that are where African Americans govern the city.
Well, that's why you're the expert, and I'm just a lowly talk show host, because I get it now. And the short answer to my question, which I get, I'm in the light now. I see it. The short answer is that in these chocolate cities, these chocolate spaces, if they reassess the property because the value of the property has gone down because of the recession or any other economic forces that are at work, if they reassess the properties and the value rather goes down, that's less money into the city's coffers, less money into the city treasury, and that's why they don't do it. So black folk again get sacrificed to save the whole city, say nothing of their neighborhoods or losing their homes or the legacy that is a part of their family. And we all know that home ownership is the way to create wealth. But they essentially, this is my saying it, not the professor, they just sacrifice black people for the sake of big business, for the sake of the city. Now I get it. I'm sick about it, but I get it. Our remaining moments with historian Andrew Carl as we talk about race and real estate. The book is called The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Andrew Carl, historian and professor. His book is called The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, that is, and Dispossession in America. I've got about 4 minutes left here, Professor Carl. Let me do this. We have established in this conversation, you have established brilliantly for us, how this process of exploitation and theft and dispossession started, as we've talked in this hour about race and real estate in this country. But you've also made the point more than once that many of these tactics and these strategies, these processes continue. In this moment, what is the way, or is there a way to abate that? Or are these policies so entrenched at the local level that nothing can be done about them? I don't buy that, but you tell me.
No, I think that there are things that we can do at the local level to make property taxes more fair, to lift the burden off of disadvantaged neighborhoods and communities. One thing we can do is start really paying more attention to these local offices. I mean, tax assessors in many states are elected officials, and yet, oftentimes, few of us can probably name who the assessor is for our local government. But when communities do step up and take notice, as they did in Chicago in 2017, when they ousted a corrupt tax assessor who had been over-assessing Black and Latino neighborhoods and elected a reformer who's come into office and tried to fix some of these problems, we can see change happen. But one thing that I sort of point out in the book throughout is that one of the problems with local property taxes is that they're local, and also that they, in a sense, are based on these housing markets that we recognize to be structurally racist. And so one of the things that I sort of argue is that we should make property taxes less important to local governments. And one way to do that is to fund local governments and public schools more at the federal level, and do so through taxing the vast amount of wealth in this country that is untaxed, namely that of the 1%. So I think one thing that, again, we should be thinking about and talking about is, why are cities like Detroit so broke that they are preying on their most disadvantaged communities? And the answer lies in the structure as a whole. And it really goes back to, beginning in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan and continuing to this day. We've seen just a steady defunding of local governments at the state and federal level. In a sense, like austerity keeps getting pushed down to the lowest levels of government, and then those local governments push it on to the most poor and disadvantaged populations. And this is the results we get: Black neighborhoods being overtaxed and underserved.
He wrote the book about it. He's done the research on it. He knows, and he has shared a good deal of that, at least a slice of it, in this hour. Hard to do justice to a book this in-depth in 1 hour, but I think you get the point of what the book is about and why you might want to consider reading it for yourself. It's called The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America, written by professor and historian Andrew Carl. That's spelled K-A-H-R-L, in case you need to know that, and you probably do, because it ain't spelled like it sounds. Andrew Carl, K-A-H-R-L is his last name. Again, the book is called The Black Tax, 150 Years of Theft, Exploitation, and Dispossession in America. And it is not lost on me what he just said a moment ago, given that we are in an election year. I've never quite thought about it in the way that I'm thinking about it now. I'm going to start paying much closer attention to who's running for tax assessor. We think about the mayor and the city council and the governor and, of course, the president this year. Ain't nobody thinking about who's running for tax assessor. I've got some questions now going forward locally for whoever's running for tax assessor in my neck of the woods, and you should too. Pay attention to who's running for tax assessor and what they're going to do to make sure that this black tax is not continued to be levied on black folk, where we, again, are robbed and exploited and dispossessed. I digress for now. Professor Carl, thank you for the work and the witness. Good to have you on this program, sir. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
The honor was mine. When we come forward in our final hour, the oldest living survivor of the Tulsa Massacre, which will commemorate 103 years later this weekend, Mother Viola Ford Fletcher on Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
We'd like to welcome you on Into a Thursday. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Jury deliberations in the murder trial of Chad Daybell are underway in Idaho. Daybell has pleaded not guilty to the murder of his first wife and the children of his second wife, Lori Vallow Daybell. Velo Daybell was already sentenced to life in prison in a separate trial. Chad Daybell could get the death penalty if convicted. A Michigan man with a suspended license is in trouble after he logged into his Zoom court hearing while driving. Video of the hearing shows the defendant, African-American Corey Harris, dialing into the Zoom call earlier this month as he was pulling into a parking lot. The judge revoked Harris's bond and instructed him to turn himself in. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
At Lowe's, save big every day when you buy in bulk. Save 10% when you buy 68 or more OSB sheathing. Because Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Does the name James Borrego ring a bell for you? If not, you're not by yourself. Borrego is an assistant coach with the New Orleans Pelicans. He spent most of Wednesday at the Lakers practice facility interviewing for the team's head coach vacancy. Other coaches the Lakers have an interest in: Boston assistant Sam Cassell, Dallas assistant Jared Dudley, former head coach Scott Brooks, and former Clippers guard J.J. Redick. The Western Conference Finals moves back to Minneapolis today for Game 5. Dallas has a 3-1 lead over the Timberwolves, 5:30 tip-off on TNT. The LA Sparks are at Chicago tonight, 5 p.m. tip. The Dodgers had 16 hits, including 4 homers, to pound the Mets in New York. The Dodgers scored 18 runs in the 3-game sweep over the Mets. The Dodgers are back home Friday against Colorado. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal